Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club. If you're at all interested in anything we talk about in this episode, go ahead and check out the description down below, or if you even just want to know more about us, click on the links below. Now on to the episode.
Coffee Experts Club. What's up, boys?
What up?
We had a crazy conversation about just the knowledge base and wisdom on this call represented by age. Just like you're all coming up on some big birthdays. So Drew is just pushing 30. Ben's just pushing 40. And I just hit 50. So just recognize, listeners, as you're listening here, you have gentlemen that are all entering into a new season of life.
120 years worth of knowledge.
Oh, man. Anyway, Coffee Experts, thanks for joining us today. Excited to talk to you guys about some of the, like we talked a couple of weeks ago about annual planning, and the purpose of annual planning and why you do annual planning and kind of what goes into preparing for annual planning. If you missed that episode, go back and check that out because I think that annual planning is really an important thing to do. But as we were talking about what we should discuss today, I think today we're going to lean a little bit on a annual planning retrospective. Like, hey, let's look back and determine 2 weeks ago we were in Montana and we spent a couple days talking through trajectory of where Drew and I are going to take Coffee de las Mayas, first drive through coffee in the country of Belize that we started at the end of 2022. So we're coming up on 3 years. We have our 3-year anniversary coming up on the 11th of November, which is exciting. But what did we come out of annual planning talking about? So I thought we could lean into that a little bit today.
Nice.
Ben, what are your thoughts on annual planning in general? I know you just came out of annual planning with me on Collab team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, and we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, just in preparation for it. It's good to just get everybody together, rally the troops in essence, spend some time together, get to see some people, especially in our world, get to see some people in real life instead of just on a screen because we're all remote. But just being able to get to see people in real life, get to sit down in the same room and say, I think one of the best things that we do every time is look back on the year and say, this is what our goals were for last year. Did we hit those goals? And we're almost in a room where we all have to say, yeah, great job. Or, man, we really missed the mark on that goal. We said we wanted to do this. We didn't quite hit. We didn't quite get there. And why didn't we quite get there? What could we have done better? Are we all doing the things that we're best at? Or are we all just juggling things because they need to be juggled, but somebody else could really be doing? So annual planning, it's great every time. I think every time we come out of it, just feel more refreshed for one. Well, for one, because I have a 2-year-old and I got to sleep in while we were at annual planning. So I'm definitely much more refreshed, but just refreshed and focused. And it's nice to have that realignment on goals, especially on goals that we may not hit. We can go, hey, is this still a realistic goal? Is this something that we even want to be doing? A year goes by and you really get a chance to determine 6 months into the year, you're like, oh, why did we bite this much off? Or why did we do this? Should we still be doing this? And it's good to be able to sit down with the troops and say, hey, let's reevaluate, guys. Is this worth it? Or should we be making a change? It's nice to have everybody's input, everybody sitting there. And with the amount of time that you're spending to really spend at least a good hour to 3 hours just wrestling through what those goals are.
Yeah. So I hear you saying honesty, right? Like I think it's really easy at the beginning of the year, especially if you're a leader and you are like, everybody does something, right? Where they give some vision speech to their people at some level, whether you make an annual planning out of it or not. I remember back in the day of Wes pulling us aside and doing like manager meetings or like the Christmas party or something. And he'd stand up and pontificate, and like give whatever he thought was coming up for the next year. But it's pretty rare that I found in companies where you're like, yeah, but at the end of the year, did we hit it?
Mm-hmm.
Did we do it? And being honest about that and having to be humbled by that if you didn't, or like giving people the attaboys, attagirls for if we did hit it. Like, I think that's a big deal. And so I think that's a really important thing. You also mentioned proximity, and Drew, I'd love to hear your perspective on this because we literally pulled you out of Belize and flew you to Montana to get some time out of it. But I think that what that did was put us in proximity together, right? Where we're a long way away, you and me typically, like in the day-to-day, but also pulled you out of daily business and put you in a remote location to say, hey, yeah, there's a lot of noise going on over there. Yes, we need to be giving attention to that. And it's important, our people that we work with, our customers. But at the same time, we need to hold this time sacred where we can get your brain clear and free so we can really like decide together what we should be working on. Maybe you could talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I think it's great to have the time and space to get out of the constant chatter of the day-to-day stuff. And I'm sure everybody feels it at some level, from the vision casting, CEO to the our regular employees. It's noise, and as we solve problems, as we create solutions, we implement things throughout the year, things we didn't expect to have to face, solutions we didn't expect to have to come up with. And at the end of the year, we can look back and say, did these things work? We've implemented them. Can we expand on them? Can we apply them to different areas in the business? And at some level, we all get frustrated with how things work, throughout the year. But getting that time away, getting the space with the people we're usually collaborating with, gives us time to kind of add our ideas together, rather than, in our own little isolated way, dealing with the problems on our own. So I think it's healthy to be able to take a step back and take a breath. I mean, it runs without us, right? And mostly, or at least I'm trying to convince myself all the time. And really expand on ideas. I mean, we came up with ideas at the beginning of the weekend, and by the end of the weekend, they'd expanded tenfold. You know what I mean? And we wouldn't really have the time to do that in our day-to-day, weekly meetings. So it's just healthy to take the time to meet with the people that you're always collaborating with, and challenge ideas. Challenge the status quo of how we've done things. Challenge the perspective in which we approach some problems. And it's really hard to do that if you don't take time away and actually sit down for a good day and talk about the problems.
Yeah, no, that was good. I think one of the things you mentioned in there that I think is an important thing to highlight is we do meet all of us together once a week for an hour every week. We do our stand-up, our level 10 meetings, which comes from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. It's about EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System. We'd advocate for, a weekly meeting where you're actually getting time together to identify, hey, these are the issues. This is what we're facing. This is how we're going to solve it. These are the big quarterly rocks that we're moving, and keeping each other accountable towards it. But I think that what you said there was really good, because even though we spend that hour with each other, we don't get all of that time stacked together. And when you're in the same space for a couple of days, it's a lot of time together. It's a lot of time just to shoot the shit, to laugh, right? To joke, to let your mind have a little bit more free space to start a conversation and not have to finish that conversation within the 60 minutes that you've got. You know what I mean? But to really take pause. And I think that was my take home from this last annual planning, Drew. And I'd love for us to, we talk a lot of theoretical here. I'd love to dive into some of the nuts and bolts of what comes out of the back of an annual planning, because for me, and this is where you and I are different as partners. And I'd love for, if you're listening today and you have a partner, whether that's a business partner or a marital partner that you do business with, to realize you come with different skill sets, different strengths and weaknesses. And I think that some of the stuff we'll talk about today really show mine and Drew's differences, but I think that how it's in a good way, and it shapes us and helps mold the future of the company. So, and then Ben, I'll kind of let you referee a little bit and play devil's advocate and ask some questions, because you're up there with us the whole time too.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the take homes was when we started the weekend, I can be the kind of guy that once we make a decision, my head's down and I'm pushing. It's like, come hell or high water, that was what we decided on, and I don't care what it's going to take. I'm going to get us there, But the downside of that can be sometimes just because you started with that direction doesn't mean that's where you should end up, and it should be challenged. And Drew came in challenging something that we had really all decided, no, this is what we are going to do. And Drew actually challenged it to say, is that though? Should that be what we're going to do? And for me, it caused a pause of, I didn't like it. We were talking about, and Drew, you okay with me kind of walking through what that decision was?
Yeah.
Talk about here. So anyway, we were pretty set on location number one for us down in Belize. The building's going to get torn down. It's just been a lease. It was our first expression in Belize. Is this concept even going to work down here? So we didn't put a ton of money into location one. It was like, let's test it. Let's see if it's going to work. Well, they're tearing that building down, and we're going to have to decide on what we're going to do, So we had kind of all decided on my last trip down there, we drove around, looked at a bunch of different spots, and we thought, well, we're going to put in a drive-through. It's our opportunity to put in a drive-through to build our own building, but we just built a building in June. You know what I mean? So we just used, and in Belize, you can't take loans in Belize. In Belize, they don't loan money, right? So you have to come to the table with your capital if you want to build something, right? So, we just exhaust all of our capital in this building of location 3, and it's great. It's beautiful. I love it. We were not anticipating have to build something 3 months later, as we move to location 1. So I think as, we've been talking about building this location, it's made us a little bit anxious because it does mean we're going to have to scramble a little bit on coming up with funds, and Drew came back with a challenge. So we had decided that's what we're just going to do. We're going to put our head down. We're going to push. We're going to make it happen. And Drew came back and challenged with this question. I thought it was so good. He said, hey, would we build a drive-through in this town if we weren't feeling desperate? And it made us really take a pause and a step back and realize, no, we actually wouldn't, because we really like the expression we have in this town right now in San Ignacio. We're having to move to the town next over to if we're going to do a drive-through there. So it was this isn't probably the town we would choose, and it's actually going to slow us down to putting a drive-through in the towns we want to do next, right? So we have a growth trajectory. We have 2 more that we want to do. And if we built this one here now, it's going to slow down our expansion, right? And so Drew's challenge from that mindset, that's not something that would have origined in my brain. You know what I mean? My brain is no, we decided, we've done it. I've lined out the contract. We've got the piece of property. We're in negotiations on the lease. For sure, we're doing this. And for Drew to challenge it, it was really good. And we left the weekend with, no, you know what? I don't think we are going to put a drive-through in this town. I think we're just going to find another expression that can be similar to what we have now in the town that we're in, San Ignacio. And we're going to not slow down our forward growth of where we want to be coming with the next drive-through. So I was really appreciative. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it felt, but it was a good challenge.
I think especially with these big decisions, because this is a huge decision, it feels like one of the biggest decisions that we've had to, steer our way through since we opened the business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotion attached to it. There's a lot of expectation and hope, and a lot of work, that goes into all these decisions. And this one, unfortunately, has been made kind of more quickly than we wanted to. And so that kind of causes also a sense of urgency. And deciding these big things, deciding to build a new store for me was, it's a huge deal. It's not a small thing to take on, especially the timing and proximity to our last store. So I think we rush into some things because we feel like we have to do this. We have to make this choice, and this seems like the best choice right now. But to be able to stop and reevaluate that, after you've done some work towards that goal, after you've had time to expand either with our internal team or with us, in leadership team, and talk about the realities and the possibilities. And we talked to the community. I think we decided 2 months ago or something like that, to do this. And then just a week and a half ago, after a month and a half of work, have kind of reevaluated. But we wouldn't probably have done that had we not met. We would have just, we don't have time. We don't have the time to sit down and make these decisions in the day to day. So being able to challenge that, it came from a place of it doesn't feel right. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel maybe like the best course. I'm still unsure exactly what the best course is. But having the freedom to talk about, not just with Aaron and I, with other people who help run the business, with Faith and David, with Ben, with Taryn, everybody who was around us, and kind of share the ideas. It's nice to get external feedback as well. People who aren't under the weight of the stress of the choices and the day to day and the success of it, they're not feeling it like we feel it, So just being surrounded by people who have open minds and getting new ideas, I think it's so valuable, because we can get like you mentioned, we put our head down and we decide to do something and we are going to do it. And us in coffee, we're notoriously stubborn. I think it's kind of one of our token personality traits here in the business. We get stubborn, and it's hard to take outside feedback without it feeling no, I know what I'm doing. It's my business. I've done it this far. But it's not always correct. We're not always right. And having more feedback, more ideas, I don't think you can go wrong following that route.
It's funny. It's funny you guys are kind of exemplifying, what we talked about, 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And I would encourage anybody listening to go back and listen to that episode of not be so singular focused on your growth that you shoehorn yourself into a location that isn't as good as you think or want it to really be. And so you're like, okay, we're going to do a drive-through in this town, but then wait, is this a good town? Am I trying to make an A location out of a C location for this drive-through? Am I okay with the amount of capital I'm going to have to spend to hoping this is going to be an A location when I could, in fact, maybe just lower it a bit, maybe spend a little less capital. And then I'm okay with it being a B or a C location because the amount of capital I just dropped into it doesn't have to be, returned on so immediately. Like the locations we had for roasters, we had plenty of B and C locations, and our C locations, they weren't huge money makers, but there wasn't a lot of capital that went into putting the lipstick on them or acquiring them. They were low cost, lower yield, but the profit margin was still just as good as our A locations. It's just we had to spend less on them. So it's funny we talked about that, and then you guys, kind of just walked the walk immediately a week ago of like, hey, you know what? This isn't the A location for a drive-through. Let's not commit to that. It's funny to see it in real life.
And I think that something that really spoke to me and that I also was challenged by was, so Indie Coffee Coalition is something that we're a part of, something that we started, something that we do with 4 other coffee shops that, we all band together and we buy bulk for energy drinks and blending powder, right? Because that's the easiest way, right? The 2 ways you make money is grow your sales and drop your cost of goods. Those are the only 2 ways in coffee that you can make money. Grow your sales, drop your cost of goods, right? Whether that's expanding to a new location, all you did was grow your sales, right? Whether that's, changing your bean vendor by beginning to roasting internally, like that's you dropping your cost of goods. One of the biggest cost of goods we've seen drop is by cutting out Red Bull and creating your own energy drink, right? Well, some people can't just fork out that kind of cash at the size that they are. And so we created Indie Coffee Coalition where all of us are banding together. We all are putting money in to go make a new batch of energy drink that we all white label and make it our own. Same thing with blending powder mix. Well, blending powder has been just like our bread and butter in Belize. It's so freaking hot all the time that blended drinks are our cash cow. Mm-hmm. Well, the best way we can control that is by dropping our cost of goods as low as possible so we can make the most amount of revenue out of our highest sellers. Well, we've been shipping down pallets upon pallets of Frat Mix, but it's really hard to keep up with, right? Because we have to keep everything about a month in advance. We're having to stay ahead of the curve. And sometimes we have a high consumption month, and it's just been honestly kind of a stressful endeavor down in Belize of us shipping down our powder. And, the David on his side of things, who runs the logistics, all the shipping, said, hey, should we be shipping frat powder? Like the blending powder mix? Like, is that something we should keep doing? Because this is a really stressful thing to manage because we consume it at such high volume. So Drew had the team start experimenting with, what if we created our own blending powder down in Belize? I mean, is that something that we could take on from a production? We've already just switched over to creating all of our own syrup, so we don't have to be buying the Tiranis and shipping it down. Like, so should we move to the blending powder? Now that to me feels awful because this is our jam. Indie's our jam. Like this is what we do. But I think it was a really good pushback from somebody else who's dealing with logistics all the time to challenge. Like we came into the whole weekend saying, hey, listen, there are no sacred cows, right? We're not going to come here. It's like, oh, don't talk about blending powder because Aaron's really invested in Indie. You know what I mean? Like, no. Like we need to decide what's best for the flow of the business. And so you have to be able to challenge those things. And so that was another one that we came out of the weekend of, I think we're actually going to move away from Indie blending powder, not because it's not the best cost, not because it's not a great product, but because logistically it's just really hard to keep up with, which means our blended drinks go up and down when we have to move away from Indie to an in-country location or like solution. So making our own just makes better sense.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the something else that we worked on was how to incentivize like trainees, new hires, because it's sometimes hard to keep new hires with the 2-week training and all new skills. And I mean, everybody in the industry probably faces a similar challenge. And the space that we have to explore ideas, for example, Faith suggested, what if we don't pay them, for the first month? So you have to stick with us a month to get your first paycheck. And it's like, okay, well, let's explore kind of what that looks like down the line. Well, most people need that money pretty quickly, right? And so a month, you're not going to get paid for a month. We might lose them way faster than, the alternative. So what's another way that we can do it? And it's like, okay, well, here's our pay scale for trainees. Is it possible that we can, bonus them X amount at the end of a month? And it's like, okay, that's great. So let's follow that. And so people get that X amount at the end of the month. But it was quite a high number based on, a wage amount that we were going to pay them. And it's like, okay, well, what if we give them half then and half after 2 months? And it's like,
our ability to be playful and be creative in these spaces of let's follow these ideas to different endpoints. And if we shift it, if we shift gears at this stage in the idea or at this stage in the idea, where will that take us? And is it going to provide a better solution? And like we mentioned, just having 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, it's hard. It's hard to do that because we do have everyday pressing matters that we have to solve and we have to talk about. And well, these things are important. They kind of get pushed to the back burner because what we have is working well enough, but it could work better. And I think it gives us the time and space to find out, how could it work better and how much better could it work? Or should we just throw the idea out altogether and start new?
Yeah, I think that it was that was a big one for us was could we move to a percentage plan? Hey, we have every intention to pay you at this rate of pay, but we're going to lessen the percentage of pay while you're in this trial period with us, and it will reward you with the bonus. You'll make all the same money. You're just going to have to stick with us for the full run to be able to make those 2 bonuses and identifying what is that window of time look like. And for us, this is the window of time that we struggle with. So let's make sure we keep that the window of time that they're going to experience these bumps. But like, I never would have thought of something like that. Like I never would have, that's not something I would have came up with, but Faith, who's dealing with payroll all the time, who's having to deal with all these pieces all the time, like she came up with it and it was a brilliant idea. So I think getting all the smart people in the same space, talking through things, I think is so, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as we wind up, coffee experts, I would really encourage you. It's still way ahead of the curve, right? You're not even at the new year yet.
Yep.
Some time in annual planning. And even if that's just a half day in your own town, but you give that half day to, hey, we're going to do this together. But if you can get away, you don't have to go to Montana like us, like go some places just far enough away that people can't bug you, and then turn off your devices for the time that you're planning, and then create spaces. We created all kinds of breaks in our annual planning where, hey, go take an hour to go take a walk or take a nap, or like catch up on your comms where everybody's blowing you up. That's fine, but don't interrupt this sacred space, because this is what is going to help us plan for the future, get out in front of this next year, and grow at the rate we want to grow. And make sure you're growing at a sustainable rate, because it's really important. You don't want to get so far out over your skis that it actually ends up hurting you as you grow. And then you're fighting against that for the next 4 or 5 years, trying to dig yourself back out. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Ben, Drew, thanks for the time. And Coffee Experts, we'll see you back here next week on Coffee Experts Club.
Thanks, fellas.
See you guys.